I'm really pleased to be joined on Not the Andrew Marr Show by Chris Williamson, who is live in Rochdale. How are you doing, Chris?
Not too bad, thanks. Just up here for the campaign in freezing cold weather in Greater Manchester.
The thing that stole the news on Wednesday, we were at the Assange hearing, and then we went to Parliament because there was a ceasefire vote put forward by the SNP. Now, there were lots of kind of rumours about deals being made behind the scenes before the vote. But what actually happened was quite incredible in that the SNP was given a day to put its motion forward, as I believe this is the procedure. And the Speaker allowed an amendment not only from the government, but from the Labour Party to an opposition day, the SNP's day, effectively. So there were two amendments. Now, people have said this is unprecedented. I don't have a clue about it because obviously what goes on in that institution is a bit alien to most of us.
Yes, indeed.
How unprecedented is it? What's your knowledge of that? What happened there? I mean, with the SNP's motion having two amendments added to scupper it effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is unprecedented, Crispin. And, certainly in my experience, I've never known it to happen. I mean, the way the Byzantine sort of rules apply in the House of Commons means that opposition parties get what's called opposition day debates. So they can, choose the motion for discussion on that particular day. Labour Party being the biggest party obviously gets more of these, but the SNP are allocated as a third party. They get allocated on a number of days as well. And in those circumstances, understandably, the party whose opposition day debate it is expect their motion to be voted upon. And so it isn't, I've never understood that to be the case where another opposition party has amended the motion of the opposition party whose opposition day debate it actually is. And so that's why I think a lot of people were unhappy about it. I think there was clearly some chicanery going on. We know that Sir Lindsay Hoyle met with Sir Keir Starmer prior to the debate taking place, and Starmer has admitted that he spoke to Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker.
You can't recall any time that you've seen an amendment from another opposition. That's the crux of it, isn't it? An amendment from another opposition party on this opposition day.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think the SNP were so cross, because their day in the chamber was stolen from them by this this fix which had been reached with the Speaker and the Labour Party. And obviously, people are pretty cross about it. And the last time I looked, this was yesterday, so the number may have increased now, but at that point in time, there were 63 MPs who were calling for Lindsay Hoyle to step down, to be replaced. And so as a result of him sort of going along with this little fix to avoid Sir Keir Starmer's blushes by preventing a rebellion, which the rumours were suggesting that up to 100 Labour MPs were going to vote for the SNP amendment, or should I say their motion, I beg your pardon.
I want to go into what actually was passed, because this is the boast that you see on Labour MPs' social media feeds. This is what they're saying. This is I just voted for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, a stop to the fighting from both sides now, the release of all hostages, a surge of aid into Gaza, a two-state solution. I'll leave that on the screen for a bit just so you can digest the enormity of it.
I mean, what the Labour Party did was to amend the SNP motion, and what they were claiming they were objecting to was that the motion didn't criticise Hamas, and so whilst they wanted to insert something which attacked effectively the Palestinian resistance, but not Israel, called on Palestinian resistance to lay down their arms, but no reference to Israel, the Israeli occupation forces laying down theirs. This talk about demanding the release of hostages is also, very one-eyed, because there are thousands of Palestinian hostages, thousands of Palestinian captives, people who've been languishing in what's known as administrative detention for years upon end, with no due process, no charge even being leveled against them, just snatched off the street and placed in these Israeli dungeons. It's a completely unacceptable state of affairs. And I've got to say, Crispin, I mean, the way in which the Labour Party motion was framed, Netanyahu himself wouldn't have a difficulty in voting for it. And so this kind of one-eyed approach that the Labour Party has taken is very kind of, driven by the Zionist entity. I mean, this was effectively a coup by the Labour Friends of Israel. The right. Parliamentary Labour Party is riddled with Zionists. I mean, I think around about half of the Labour MPs are members of the so-called Labour Friends of Israel, an out-and-out Zionist organisation. And this was a coup. So what we've ended up with is a situation where the government put down an amendment, but they then withdrew it. And the speaker, or the deputy speaker, called the Labour amendment to be put, and obviously the SNP objected to that, and many of them kind of walked out. But so in the end, what we've ended up with is a situation where the House wasn't divided; it was just agreed on the nod, as it were, so the Labour motion was passed. But it was a totally unsatisfactory state of affairs, and complete abuse of the parliamentary procedures.
I mean, saying that both sides have to stop the fighting, and it's one-sided. There's no question on that. I mean, that's just ridiculous. The number of things,
you've got an occupying power.
Adding so many points to it makes it almost, too complicated to actually anything to be resolved at all, doesn't it?
I mean, the whole thing stinks, Crispin. It really does. And we, at the end of the day, look, we've got an occupying power which is engaged in a genocide, which has imposed an apartheid system for over 75 years now. And in international law, the people being occupied have an absolute right to armed resistance. The Israelis don't have a right to do what they're doing. Of course they don't. I mean, all of what they're doing is wrong. It's wrong morally, and much of it is illegal in international law.
You watch the media on what happened on Wednesday, and they sort of say how Starmer was possibly bullying the speaker, or they sort of, there's these side shows that they're trying to get us involved in about Starmer's relationship with the speaker, or whether Labour's done a really clever trick here. Labour's done really well. Not the fact that there's people dying at the moment from the genocide, but the thing that I find today, this is on Friday, this is the most dark thing I've ever seen, is that the Sky interview with Keir Starmer has been deleted from their social media account. And so I am really chuffed that somebody out there is screenshotting and recording these interviews. So this is what Keir Starmer said on Sky that they don't want you to see.
The proposition I put on the table in that amendment was crafted by me after I came back from the Munich Security Conference, having spoken to Secretary of State Blinken, having spoken to the Prime Minister of Qatar, having spoken to the President of Israel, i.e. having spoken to the people who are actually involved in trying to wait for this awful conflict. I wanted that proposition heard and voted on, and my MPs wanted to vote on it.
I mean, he said that he spoke to the president of Israel before drawing up that amendment, which, you're talking about one of the countries involved in this so-called war. I mean, the perpetrator of the genocide. He's asking them, "What should I do?" I mean, no wonder Sky have taken it down. But look at this as well. I mean, this is Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House, in the last, 2 months ago, visited Israel and gave them full support after what was already going on in Gaza with the genocide. He was quite happy to go out there publicly, seen, photographed, shaking hands with politicians, and then also it's been revealed that his dad set up Labour Friends of Israel. I can't see how Labour hasn't exposed itself even more to the fact that it's in the pocket of Israel.
I couldn't agree with you more, Crispin. And it's this whole debacle is another reason why I think we should be urging people to boycott Labour everywhere. I mean, Labour Party doesn't represent the interests of this country, actually. As we know, they bought into the whole neoliberal agenda. So on the domestic front, there's going to be no real difference to the agenda going forward in terms of the levels of poverty. They're not going to be unduly altered as a result of the changing government. There's going to be no public ownership. Public services are still going to be in meltdown, but their international policy, is just as bad, if not even more bellicose than the government's is. And they seem to be even in the pockets of the Israeli regime to an even greater extent than the Tories actually are. So, this, I think, absolutely is another example of why we have to, continue to build an alternative to the Labour Party. Obviously, I'm up in Rochdale now. We're hopeful that George Galloway will make that breakthrough. And we're hoping that we can get at the general elections, some sane voices to speak up for these issues, which obviously increasing numbers of people are particularly concerned about. But what they've done, I think, in actually, manipulating the parliamentary procedures, it's a kind of classic dead cat strategy that Boris Johnson talked about, isn't it? And as you were saying earlier, Crispin, what we've ended up is a situation where the corporate media they're all talking about, what happened in Parliament and, what procedures were broken and so on and so forth. And it's kind of moving the attention away from what the purpose of the motion was to, highlight this genocide that's ongoing and to try and, as it were, get a unified voice if possible. Although I suspect what would have happened is that the Labour Party and the Tories would have voted against it, and that would have exposed them as to an even greater extent as advocates of genocide. We know that they're facilitating it. They're continuing to provide arms to the Israeli regime, as well as diplomatic cover and cover it in the media for what they're doing. I mean, it's truly a despicable spectacle when you see these Labour politicians come in and trying to, contorting themselves to try and make excuses for what Israel has been doing. It's frankly appalling.
And finally, that the other thing that we've learned a lot about in the last few months is the dishonesty, the lies that are told by Israel constantly about what's going on. I mean, on a scale I've never known. I mean, you can't believe how many things they say that are dishonest. It's unbelievable. They say they haven't bombed the hospital and deny it and stuff, and then they keep bombing all these other ones. It's just so. Tunnels under the hospital. Look, there's a tunnel there. We're under the hospital now. All this kind of nonsense. I could go into so many more. I mean, they even disprove the numbers of dead, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then that dishonesty, I can't help thinking that it's creeping in. It's not just about supporting Israel, but the way in which politicians are lying now in the same fashion as Israel. I mean, I'll just play these clips of the speaker who is caught in this situation. I mean, look at the two versions of why he decided to make the decision that Labour and the Tories could have an amendment as well to the SNP.
House, that in my opinion, the operation of Standing Order number 31, which governs the way amendments to the Opposition Day motions are dealt with, reflects an outdated approach which restricts order. You'll be going and not be voting. I would say that we can have an SO24 to get an immediate debate because the debate is so important to this House. I will defend every member in this House. Every member matters to me in this House. And it has been said, both sides, I never, ever want to go through a situation where I pick up a phone to find a friend of whatever side has been murdered by terrorists. I also don't want another attack on this House. I was in the chair on that day. I have seen, I have witnessed. I won't share the details, but the details of the things that have been brought to me are absolutely frightening on all members of this House, on all sides. I have a duty of care, and I say that. And if my mistake is looking after members, I am guilty.
Look, I just want to say, look, the speaker there, the way he was acting about the terror threat and stuff, it reminded me of how Israel talks about Hamas's atrocities.
Absolutely.
How it does this how fearful, how gravely serious it is, and to change our bearings, to move us to some other issue. I mean, it's scandalous that he could even think of changing it like that. It's so obvious that he's being dishonest.
I couldn't agree with you more, Chris. I mean, it was a truly revolting spectacle, I've got to say, to try and somehow imply that MPs were under threat because of the increasing concern that is being expressed on the streets by ordinary members of the public. I mean, millions of people are absolutely appalled by what they're witnessing, and they're coming out in unprecedented numbers in virtually every town and city in the country. And understandably, they're putting MPs under pressure. That's how democracy should work. They should be put under pressure. But to then somehow imply that they're in threat of violence or even being murdered, and to somehow suggest that the people that are absolutely horrified by what they're witnessing are somehow the violent ones are somehow threatening MPs with violence and even murder. I mean, it's truly beyond the pale. I mean, talk about a dead cat tragedy. Utterly despicable behaviour, frankly, from the speaker. And I mean, the guy should really go. I mean, he's got no redeeming features, in my opinion. The guy's clearly manipulated the House of Commons procedures to suit Sir Keir Starmer and to suit the Zionist lobby. And we know from what you've already said and what we've already spoken about that he himself is been a long-standing Zionist. Even his father before him, as you mentioned, Crispin, establishing the so-called Labour Friends of Israel. I mean, this guy's far from being impartial. He is seems to be taking his order from Tel Aviv. Absolutely outrageous. I mean, it brings Parliament into disrepute, into further disrepute, and it's already held in sort of disrepute, I think, by the vast majority of the public anyway. But things like this, I mean, it just makes it even worse. These characters are really not fit for purpose, and it really does reinforce the need for us to, get some fresh blood into the House of Commons. Because our democracy isn't working. Our democracy has been stolen from us, essentially, because we're living in a one-party state that's signed up to the war machine and signed up to the whole neoliberal economic agenda as well. Who have we got to speak for us? Who have we got to speak up for us in Parliament now?
Well, that's why it's good to see your George Galloway banner just behind you there. I mean, if
Yes.
George Galloway gets in there, I mean, that would be quite good to see him being told to sit down by Lindsay.
Oh, my
I'm
God.
sure he won't be doing that.
He would really shake the place up. Look, I mean, George, he's probably the best orator anywhere in the world, the best parliamentary performer. One only needs to look at some of the old footage of him, taking on those US senators in the aftermath of the Iraq War, for example, or look at some of his contributions in the House of Commons in the past. My God, he will really shake things up. And that's just one person. Just imagine if we can get more people in the House who actually stand up for humanity, stand up for decency, It would really, I think, shake things up. And look, if George gets in and he's in with a great chance, but we can't be complacent. I think it will be a huge fillip to all those independent campaigns which are coming together around the country, and I think will really inspire people and give them an extra boost, as it were, to put in that extra effort to get through. And who knows, even Andrew Feinstein, let's hope, fingers crossed, he may get through in Sir Keir Starmer's own constituency. I mean, what a wonderful addition he would be to the House of Commons. Just imagine, we had people like George Galloway, Andrew Feinstein, people of that ilk, speaking on the green benches. Oh my God! I mean, it would restore faith in democracy, wouldn't it? It would restore faith in, that the House of Commons can be a place where it can be a real tribune of the people. But at the moment, it's just a tribune for the war machine and corporate capitalism.